What is going on, you guys? It is your boys from Odds HQ and odds.com. It's me, Bleed, from Just Bleed MMA, and we got my man Al Mack in the house. This is the post show for UFC Vegas 15. We've just wrapped it up, and we're going to go over your main card. We're also going to talk about a couple other fights in the combat world once we're done with that. Al Mack, how are you doing?
Good, man. It's another late one tonight, but it was a pretty entertaining night of fights considering everything that led up to this weekend. So yeah, I'm excited to break it down.
Definitely. This UFC card wasn't the strongest card as far as name value, but, we talk about it, man. Sometimes these fights that, we don't have a lot of casual viewers, a lot of hype, turn out to be some of the most action-packed cards. And I think this one absolutely delivered. So first fight of the night on the main card, Jonathan Pierce, the massive, at one point, plus 300 underdog, wins. Second round, KO TKO, 4 minutes, 28 seconds, so round number 2. Beats Kai Kamaka the third. Man, this is one that just an incredibly offline. Kai Kamaka opens up as a minus 400 favorite over Pierce. I don't think that made sense really to anybody. I think a lot of people probably had Kai Kamaka in those parlays, and man, this was not the card for a parlay. Let me tell you, RIP to the parlays. And Jonathan Pierce killed a few on his own. What'd you think of this one, Al?
Yeah, it was just one of those fights where the line just didn't make sense. And, even if you thought Kamaka was going to win, there was no path for you to bet him at that price. Pierce cashes at plus 750 to win by TKO, 5-1 inside the distance. Yeah, it was just one of those ones where the odds were just they weren't indicative of how close these two guys were. And yeah, it was just one to be on, like you said, tonight was a one to be on the plus money on all sides here, especially in this division.
Man, no kidding. The dogs were barking tonight. So, second fight on the main card. What do you know? Another underdog cashes. Norma Dumont, a 4-1 fighter, now 5-1, comes in here. She did miss weight. We got to kind of knock her for that, which is unfortunate. It'll be good if she can actually make this 135-pound weight limit at some point. But I think she came in at 139 pounds. Really never got close. Really comes in here, man, and just puts it on Ashley Evans Smith. Wasn't a massive underdog. I want to say around that maybe plus 120 range, but man, it was all one-way traffic. Norma Dumont goes in there. She's the better grappler. She's the better striker. We talked about it a little bit before we went live, but, Paul Felder kind of spilled the beans as this one, fired up. Ashley Evans Smith seemed to be guarding an injury. Something was going on there. Information that would have just absolutely helped everyone get a really solid read, and probably would have had a lot more money coming out of Norma Dumont if we had known Ashley Evans Smith as the public, if we had known she's injured. But, man, you can't really take anything away from Norma Dumont outside the weight miss. She looked phenomenal, really put it on Ashley Evans Smith, and just a dominant victory, cruises to a decision. How'd you see this one?
Yeah, I got fooled by this one. I thought Evans Smith had the edge here, but it was one of those women's MMA fights where, like, as soon as the bell rings, you're like, oh, this is how this is going to go. Dumont looked good. But yeah, Ashley Evans Smith is tough. She's really tough. But usually when you say somebody is really tough, that means that they're going to lose the fight because they're just taking damage. And it's interesting because so she cashed a best line at plus 137 on the money line, Norma Dumont. It's just the 11th time that an underdog in the women's bantamweight division has cashed since January of last year. But with that said, it is the 33rd time since January of last year that a bantamweight division women's fight has gone over. So the over in this division is 33-6 since last year. If you bet $100 on the over in every fight in the women's bantamweight division last year, you're up $914. So, you're taking some minus 300s and stuff like that. So it's
Sure.
not something that I would exactly advise, but it's a positive EV trend to follow. If you can get in that range where, minus 250 minus 250 seems it's a little steep, but considering that trend and considering the way that it goes between these two types of fighters, the over seemed like a lock, as they say.
Yeah, well, man, you hit the nail on the head. Statistically speaking, it's a very solid play. Now, don't get me wrong. Yeah, you're going to be hitting some pretty steamed spots, but man, proven winners are proven winners, right? Yeah, man. So, I mean, I guess looking forward, and even, we kind of glossed over the last fight. Don't sleep on Jonathan Pearson. I'm going to say, man, don't sleep on Norma Dumont.
Oh yeah,
I said, she was only 4-1 coming into this fight, but to beat somebody like Ashley Evans Smith, who's been in there with a pretty high level of competition, she looked great. And honestly, I think we're going to be able to make a more solid read now that we kind of know what we have. She could be a contender. Like I said, let's hope she can make that weight. What can we really do with someone who doesn't make weight? The women's 145-pound division isn't really a thing. Nunes has the belt, but who's really there? I mean, it's just kind of, there's no one there to really fight. We can't even really come up with like a good, this person beats this person. There's just no real talent there. So hopefully Norma Dumont can start hitting this 135 mark and we may have a real contender here. So let's keep it rolling though. Bill Algeo, one of the more popular dogs this week, man. And I got to give people credit who saw this one. Bill Algeo takes the clear decision win over Spike Carlisle. Man, it just came down to it. I think everyone thought Bill Algeo was probably going to have the better gas tank here. We know Spike Carlisle's pretty dangerous early on, but man, Bill Algeo just stays in his face, pushes an incredible pace. And honestly, for my money, man, from what I can tell, I watch a lot of fights. Bill Algeo is just the better fighter here. I really, truly believe that. Goes out there, puts it on Spike Carlisle. I think we had a lot of maybe – was it all three judges 30-27? Either way, though, clear victory for Bill Algeo, another underdog cashes. What'd you think of this one, Al?
Yeah, it was so like I said earlier, it's the second underdog at featherweight to cash, which is pretty rare. We've seen, it's mostly I have it in front of me. The favorite after tonight in featherweight 66-43 since last year. So heavily towards the favorite in this division. Something that's worth noting, the over cashes in this one. The over in featherweight seems to be the way to go. Again, I'm just generalizing here because it's hard to break down fighters that the normal casual, we'll say, MMA fan doesn't really know these guys.
Sure.
So you're breaking it down by division. The over in featherweight 73-39 since 2019.
Wow.
For 12 units profit. So it seems like, you think about it, you look at the title fights in this division over the past few years, Volkanovski twice goes the distance with Holloway. I think before that, what was it before that? I can't remember. Holloway defended against I can't remember. But anyways, the over seems to be it's almost even like if you think about Cater against Dan Ige, like
Sure.
That was one of those fights where a classic featherweight bout, ranked fighters, but even he just couldn't put him away. So it seems like almost the power just isn't there. I don't know exactly what it is, but the over seems to be the way to go in this division.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, and I think of fights off the top of my head, and I do feel like these featherweights, it's a lot of fights that, even the fights can be kind of totally one-way traffic where a guy's just really beating the other dude, but, he survives. Even in a lot of those 5-round fights, if they don't, it's the over. Even if the finish comes late. You know what I mean? Max Holloway, Brian Ortega is probably the fight you're thinking of. So, yeah, man. So I tell you what, be on the lookout. This guy, Bill Algeo, looks like he's the real deal. Narrowly lost to Ricardo Lamas in his last fight, but gets a quality win over a pretty good prospect in Spike Carlisle. So Bill Algeo, who does he fight next? He did call out. Who was it he called out? Do you remember? Did you see the interview, Al? Giga Chikadze. He calls out Giga.
Yeah, Giga's just
That's a great matchup. I would love to see that matchup. But let's move on here. Here we go. What do you know? The dog train continues to roll on. That was 4 dogs in a row to open up our main card here. And honestly, I think we had a couple dogs leading in off the prelims into that streak. Incredible night for the underdogs here. And speaking of dogs, Parker Porter by unanimous decision beats Josh Parisian. Yeah, all in all, I mean, from a betting standpoint, man, I felt like a lot of people were on Parisian. I even touched in one of the prediction videos. I picked Parisian to win, but I told people, man, we got to be careful here. Parisian seemed to be like the parlay darling this week, where people felt so confident Parisian beat Parker Porter. Man, that just wasn't the case. And honestly, that this fight played out. And honestly, I think if they fought 10 times, Parker Porter wins 8 out of 10 times. I truly think Parker Porter is probably the more skilled guy here, and obviously was the better man tonight. Puts it on Parisian. I'm not sure if Parisian won one round. I mean, for my money, Parker Porter went out there and, he's the fatter looking guy. I mean, I don't know if either guy is going to win a bodybuilding contest, but, Parker Porter, you look at the guy physique wise, he doesn't look like a guy that's going to have a pretty good gas tank. He had a pretty good gas tank in this fight. I think we were probably selling him a little bit short, ended up getting knocked out by Dawkins in his UFC debut. Really discounted him, and man, I want to say he was around a plus 175 underdog here, and goes out there, puts it on Parisian, and really never was it. Well, you know what? Parisian landed a few good shots early in the first round, but other than that, man, it was all Parker Porter after that. What'd you think of this one, Al?
Yeah, there's just so many lessons to learn from this one. And the first one is, don't bet heavy favorites in the heavyweight division with two unranked fighters. The value is always on the underdog. And, it's just one of those things where Porter is a MMA veteran. He fought John Jones at one point in his career. He just seemed like he knew how to get through that fight better than Parisian did. And you talked about the fight against Dawkins. Porter looked a lot slimmer tonight than he did compared to that Dawkins fight. And he just didn't stop. There was just he had such high output, and it was pretty impressive, to be honest. It was one of those things. I had Parker Porter, and it's as simple as the line shouldn't have been that high. It closed at plus 200 at some books. And then again, even with the over, I've talked about this a bunch of times this year. The over in heavyweight has gone 22-20. So it's basically a coin flip. And if you're getting almost like, you should be going at plus money on either side. Like the total is almost just as hard to call as the fighters themselves. This division is just, people say that everybody loves heavyweights, and like, I love watching heavyweights too, but it's so hard to break down. You put these guys in a fight, you put the top heavyweights in the UFC in a fight, they're all going to beat each other. It's just the way that it goes, the level of talent. It's a crazy division. And, I'm not saying that Parker Porter needs to fight a ranked fighter or anything like that, but it was just one of those things where he was the better fighter. And at plus 200, even if he wasn't going to win, it's the right side to make. And he cashed at plus 800, 8-1 to win by decision. And it was a wild one. One of those ones where if you had Parisian in a parlay, I feel so bad for you. And I hope that you hedged, because, if that was the last leg of your parlay and you lost like that, that would have been a terrible way to end your night.
Well, but I'm telling you what, man, between Parisian and Kamaka, I don't think a whole lot of parlays probably cashed tonight. So, yeah, man, I'm not really sure what our ceiling here is for Parker Porter. I mean, is he ever going to challenge for the title? I don't think so. Is he ever going to be top 10 in the heavyweight division? Probably not, but crazier things have happened. Like you said, it's not necessarily the strongest division in the UFC. I mean, when you talk from an athletic standpoint, if you're a heavyweight in the UFC, you've got the size that's probably possible for you to be in the NFL, the NBA, some other athletic endeavor that's probably much more financially sound than going out there and having 265-pound men punch you in the head. But Parker Porter, man, gets it done, and you can't take nothing away from him. It was going to be his night, man. The determination and just him going out there and just getting it done, very impressive. So we are up to the co-main event of the evening, man. Miguel Baeza goes out there, just looks phenomenal. Wins by arm triangle choke. Shout out to the people who watched the props video that our man MMA Lock of the Night, Cody Safdie, put out. They tipped you guys off to this one, man. Miguel Baeza hitting that submission, his first submission in the UFC over Takashi Sato, 4 minutes, 28 seconds to round number 2. Man, this is a fight that honestly I felt like might not be a bad dog spot here, Takashi Sato, being as we saw Miguel Baeza eat some really hard shots from Matt Brown in his previous fight. Almost got finished, but, recovered well, ended up taking out Matt Brown. I got to tell you what, man, you could tell he absolutely shored up that hole in his game. His defensive striking so much better. Just never gave Takashi Sato that opportunity to land that big bomb. This fight for Sato was kind of a puncher's chance, but to be honest, Takashi Sato, he's always a puncher's chance. You look at Takashi Sato, if he's going to win a fight, he's going to knock somebody out. Miguel Baeza never gave him the chance. Miguel Baeza, just the far better fighter and a guy that climbs to 10-0, and boy, I tell you what, Miguel Baeza, this guy continues to improve. We could really have something here. Looks great in this spot. What'd you think of this one, Al?
Yeah, this is another one of those spots where the favorite pushes that total to a spot where it was bettable, and even with him picking up the second round submission, the fight still went over 1.5 rounds. That's depending on what book you got it at, because some books count 1.5 rounds as 2.5 minutes. Some count it as the third round has to start. But yeah, over 1.5 rounds cashes in this fight. And it was one of those ones at minus 137 that the difference in the two fighters, the market thought that Baeza was going to win easily. So that pushes that makes the market believe that it's going to be a quick finish, which makes it so that a line that you would normally get at 2.5 comes down to 1.5. You got it at minus 137. And the market didn't think that it was going to go the distance, because Fight Goes the Distance was minus 190. So it was one of those weird spots where, the market was telling you Baeza inside the distance was a good play, and the over was a good play as well. Somewhere in between those two, plus 137 on inside the distance, minus 137 on over 1.5 rounds. It was one of those ones where I think Baeza should have been favored by more. Like, there was a lot of value, even at minus 205. There's still quite a bit of value. Like, Baeza isn't a parlay piece at that point. He's like a all way 205 to win one type thing. And but again, it's hard to see that prior to the fight. A lot of people were high on Sato, but I bet Sato. Didn't think that was going to be the way that it ended up, but yeah, welterweight division, man, it's a weird one. It's a toss up when you have two unranked fighters.
Sure. Yeah, man, it's a fight that I definitely thought was going to play out closer, but man, Miguel Baeza, like I said, the best version we've ever seen of him. Just picked his shots tremendously, takes the fight to the ground, finds the sub. Wow, very impressive performance against a very tough guy in Takashi Sato. So we're already up to the main event, and man, not much to say here. Anthony Smith goes out there, handles his business. We didn't need to talk to Dana White about making this one a 5-round main event. Anthony Smith, man, if you knew you were going to do that, why even waste the text message? He goes out there 2 minutes and 34 seconds, man, takes Devin Clark down, finds the triangle with ease, and man, really wraps this one up with a bow tie. A guy that honestly, you look at how we've seen things go in the UFC, comes out of this fight untouched. I'm honestly, Devin Clark might have only landed 1 or 2 strikes in this fight. Anthony Smith might be looking to get one of these quick turnarounds here in 2 or 3 weeks. Might not be the worst idea before we wrap up 2020, but good to see Anthony Smith use that good fight IQ finally. He was kind of on a skid. He was only a minus 135 in that range when this fight went off. And, when you looked at these guys and look at their body of work, it was clearly apparent Anthony Smith had fought far better people and really was just a far better fighter. But, based off of how bad he looked recently, I guess people thought Devin Clark might have been playable, but Anthony Smith goes out there, shows he is the far superior fighter. What did you think of this one, Al?
Yeah, this one got me. I had it. I took it both sides. I went Smith inside the distance, but I also came back a little bit on Clark by decision. It's interesting. Anthony Smith, since returning to the UFC in 2016, he's had 14 fights. He's finished 7 of them. So now inside the distance for Anthony Smith has been pretty profitable for almost 7 units if you've bet him inside the distance of every fight since 2016, since he returned to the UFC. 10-8 since 2011 in fights with professional odds posted. So even then, he's a profitable fighter. And this is one of those spots where it was just so perfect to take him because the market was so against him. The recency bias was so against him. But the odds definitely shouldn't have been as close as they were. This was a coin flip type fight. Implied probability said that this is about 60-40, 55-45, depending, and that's definitely not where this line should have been. Anthony Smith, say what you want about him, he's still a top-ranked UFC light heavyweight. He's still, he's fought the best of them. It's hard. What's going on in 2020? Look at the world. Look at the planet that we're witnessing, everything around us. You can't blame the guy for having a rough 2020. He ended it on a good note. It was nice to see. It's nice to see he's like a mainstay for the UFC, and it would have been tough to see him lose again. And what would have happened if he lost again? Really, like where would he have went with 3 losses in 2020? That would have been pretty terrible. So Smith by submission plus 450. And I would like to see, there probably wasn't a lot of people that were. What do you think? Do you think that there was a lot of people that were thinking that this was going to end the way that it did? That triangle choke, that was really well done. He slapped that on like he drilled it quite a bit. That was a great finish. He really needed that. What did you think about that submission?
Yeah, well, it was super slick, man. He set it up fully all the way from the moment Devin Clark was getting in position. Anthony Smith was trying to hit that, triangle. Clark honestly gave it to him. He took it. Anthony Smith has very slick jiu-jitsu. It's just unfortunate we don't really get to see it. Like this guy really does have higher level jiu-jitsu. He's just one of these guys that has the propensity to go out there and wants to stand a distance and bang. And the UFC, all this stuff, Dana White, the bonuses, it's under, these guys are under pressure to go out there and get spectacular KOs. That's what puts an extra $50,000 in your pocket. And, I think a lot of people don't realize what these guys make. Most people that are getting a $50,000 bonus, that's way more money than they're getting paid to actually fight, and not just fight, to show and win. You know what I mean? So $50,000, that's a major motivator for a lot of these people. And, maybe Anthony Smith's guilty of that, but man, goes out there, puts on a great performance. I honestly thought that the over was probably a pretty good angle here when you consider that the fight was moved up to 5 rounds, right? This fight was supposed to be 3 rounds, then got moved to 5. I thought we were probably going to see both guys come out there a little bit slower pace to try to, elongate the gas tanks, try to make it so, they're going to be able to last those 5 rounds. But man, Anthony Smith said, I'll have none of that. Let's take this dude to the ground. I think I surprised a lot of people seeing Anthony Smith immediately take the fight to the ground. Devin Clark's the All-American wrestler. But Anthony Smith, man, just showed he's the far superior guy on the ground. Set the trap. Devin Clark falls right in. 2.5 minutes into the first round, it's a wrap. So that concludes our UFC Vegas 15 coverage. But we got a couple other things we wanted to talk about before we get out of here. We had a little bit of boxing action tonight, and I know the first fight you wanted to talk about, Jake Paul, YouTuber Jake Paul, ferociously knocks out Nate Robinson. What'd you think of this one, Al?
Yeah, it was a gift. It was just an absolute gift. The line was, it floated around from like minus 300 to as low as minus 140. The books didn't know what to do with this. It was one of those things where if you're a, if you're it doesn't matter if you have the money, you can get yourself into this spot where you can train enough, you can become talented enough to win fights against people who aren't professionals. And that's exactly what Jake Paul did. And the fact that they let that fight continue after Robinson got knocked down that first time, that was like a 25 count, and the ref just let it keep going. I don't know what that was. But yeah, I bet very heavily on Jake Paul minus 270, and I thought that was a steal. And I know that some people got it a lot better. You said you got it at like what, minus 145?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I'm not going to pat myself too much on the back here, but I kind of sniped this one perfectly. I had been looking at this spot since yesterday. I watched the weigh-ins yesterday, and I got a pretty solid read. Coming into it, I did as much research as I could on how guys were looking in training, and Jake Paul looked pretty good in training. Nate Robinson, I wasn't really seeing that much that impressed me. But boy, I tell you what, weigh-ins yesterday, I saw a highly motivated, ready to go guy in Jake Paul. And I saw from the body language standpoint in Nate Robinson, a guy who kind of didn't really seem to want to be there. And I got to keep it real. That kind of played exactly into how tonight went. Nate Robinson really never boxed. He kind of would lunge in, throw a hard shot, and then wrap up. I don't think Nate Robinson really wanted to fight. I think he may have, for better words, written a check with his mouth that he just couldn't cash. And when push came to shove, Jake Paul is a young dude, an aggressive guy, a guy who, I don't think he's the best boxer in the world. It was only his second professional fight, and honestly, fighting Nate Robinson, I don't know if that should really count as another professional fight, because he's obviously no professional. But yeah, man, this was an absolute gift bet on the night, and thank goodness we had it, because it wasn't a strong night for me UFC wise. So having Jake Paul as some additional juice definitely helped. But yeah, man, unreal that they let that fight continue. You could tell from his body language off those first couple knockdowns, he didn't want to be there. He was done, and wow, what a ferocious KO. Just a body folding, arms down, awesome KO. I felt like we just had to talk about it, especially the thing that's crazy is, man, you talk about you got him at minus 270. He was like minus 225 for me yesterday, and I actually thought about pulling the trigger, but I did, and I backed off. I said, it's Jake Paul. What am I doing here betting on a YouTuber? You know what I mean? This is
man. Yeah.
crazy, like I know better than this. But I contemplated it. Then I'm kind of looking at the book, as the fight's getting ready to start. It's just a tidal wave of money comes in on Nate, and I felt strong-armed into the spot. I said, if I'm debating a minus 225, a minus 145 is just it forced my hand. You know what I mean? And luckily for me, we bet the numbers, not the fighter, right? So there you go. That's just all there was to it. Too much value, and my goodness, man, the way that fight played out, Jake Paul should have been legitimately minus 10,000, because no point was there any option of Nate winning that fight. So, but to talk about the main event of the night as far as the boxing world goes, oh boy, Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. I'm really not sure what to think, man. I almost feel like I need to marinate in this fight for a day or two before I really can give you like a solid recollection. It was an exhibition, the funny set of rules. I will say this though, man, and I tell you what, I really missed out. I kind of wish they could have kept this a little more hush-hush, and this fight could have gone off as it was originally planned. So coming into this fight, we found out this is an exhibition. There's not going to be like a really, licensed judges scoring, So I said to myself, we got two 50-year-old guys in here. I'm not really sure either one should be out there. This kind of feels like a weird mixture of a performance art with maybe some real fighting involved, but they weren't allowed to go for the KO. So I said to myself, wow, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a very close fight with no clear winner and they give it a draw. Well, earlier this week, you could bet draw plus 1,200. But I tell you what, man, the books wised up real quick. I tried to drop an absolute bomb on plus 1200 for this fight. They kicked it back. They rejected it. They said, no, 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 you're not pulling one over on us on this spot. Sure enough, the fight goes to a draw. My goodness, it would have made my 2020 to cap off a plus 1200 win on a draw bet in a potentially, I don't know if I'm going to say phony old man fight, but I don't know, man. What'd you think? Did you think we saw two guys go out there and really give it their all, or was there something more to this in your eyes?
Yeah, it was one of those things where I was breaking this fight down with Adam Martin, odds.com personality, and we were he said Roy Jones Jr. is the way to go. I agreed with him, but we didn't. He also said earlier, about 2 weeks ago, that the draw at 12-1 was probably a good look. And we were just thinking that Roy's cardio. He fought in his late 40s. I think he fought at one point when it was 50 against a bare knuckles FC guy. It was just one of those things where Jones couldn't get that separation because it was only 2-minute rounds. So it was like the rules were made specifically so that they can go at each other with some type of integrity to make it look like, that it was Mauro Ranallo, who's the commentator. He said, this reminds me of my professional wrestling days. And he was talking about the clinching and stuff, but really he was talking about how it was a sham. It wasn't really a sham in the way that they were performing. It was just the way that it was entirely constructed. The 2-minute rounds really favored Tyson because he can come out and be explosive.
Sure.
Roy Jones is more about that, keeping the distance, waiting for his opponent to get gas, and then hitting those spots, which he was able to do well into his late 40s as a professional. But without that extra minute of gassing his opponent out, it was just clinching, and it was just he was getting a lot of body work to him, and it didn't look like it was weird because everybody thought that Jones was going to have the better gas tank, and it was clear, in that 7th and 8th round, Tyson was still standing upright, and Jones is hunched over. I don't ever want to see anything like this ever again.
No.
Let's stop this. Jake Paul, that's a different story.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, like that's cool, but like, come on, let's stop this. Let's stop this. Like people over 50 should not fight professionally. If you're 48, 49, you're Oscar De La Hoya. I think he's still in his 40s. I could be wrong, but like, you don't go out there and try to box professionally. It's just so ugly. It hurts the sport. And I say that, and I know that people are going to freak out on me because of how many eyeballs it got in the sport of boxing, but that's just not what boxing is, man. It's not what it is. But at the same time, it is what it is. It's 2020. The friggin' thing was hosted by Mario Lopez. It was a complete sideshow. It is what it is. It's just I can't even. The more I talk about it, the more I'm just talking myself in circles. It was a freak show. But I bet on it. It got my money. I didn't bet on the main event though. The main event was one of those things where I kept almost getting to the window, putting my wager in, and I just looked at myself in the reflection of my computer. I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. And I tell you what, if I were going to take a side, I would have taken Roy Jones Jr. too. It was just one of those things where I said to myself, man. Now listen, if they would have let me bet the draw, I was going to bet the draw. And what do you know? It comes through. They didn't let me do it. It is what it is. In a way, it kind of makes sense. If everybody who had their money involved ended up getting it kicked back, right? It's a push for everybody. But yeah, I will say this. I was surprised by the amount of people that tried to tell me that Mike Tyson was going to come out there and knock out Roy Jones Jr. in the first round. I said, come on, you guys. This guy couldn't take people out. He was having trouble at, what, 34, 35 years old. But everybody knows in your 50s you regain that power. You know, I don't know, man. It is what it is.
Yeah,
But that's it, man. That is a wrap. We covered UFC. We even covered on the freak show boxing. Is there anything you want to leave the people with before we get out of here, Almac?
No, I'm super excited for December.
Right.
UFC, UFC Vegas 16, UFC 256,
Yep.
and then that crazy December 19th card. So we're gonna have some big fights going into the end of 2020, and yeah, I'm super excited about that. Super excited about the coverage that we're gonna have for these fights heading into the end of 2020. So yeah, it's going to be super fun.
Absolutely, man. You know, a lot of people were saying this wasn't necessarily the best card. Well, buckle up because we've got some incredible cards closing out this last 2020. What do we have? We have 3 events, I believe, to cap it off. Or do we? Man, you know what? I think we only have.
No.
Do we only have 2 events left?
No, we have 3.
We have 3.
Yeah,
okay. You're right. Yep, 3 events left to close out 2020. Keep it tuned right here on Odds HQ and odds.com. We got the boys hitting it from every angle. We'll be breaking down every fight, figuring out every winner. Stay tuned, folks. We got some great stuff. Thank you guys for watching, man. We had quite a few people on the live show tonight. Great to see you guys making this a regular thing. Catch us next week, post-fight show, Saturday night, same place. As soon as the press conference wraps, we go live. So be ready for it. For my man Al Mack, I am Just Bleed from Just Bleed MMA. We're out of here, folks.